which allows people to, I guess, look at things from like news sources and be able to access the information more easily. And whether or not they choose to believe those news sources is entirely up to them, because at that point, if they refuse to literally look at like official translations of people that know the language, then they're just in denial at that point, and there's really no helping them.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't this what happened recently with the Tsundere?
Oh God, that whole hot.
Tsundere?
Yeah,
Wait,
and even the developer was like, no, I stand by that translation. That is actually accurate. And then people were like, how dare you tell me that I can't be mad at this?
I want to say
How dare you inject your feminism into your own work?
Yeah, I want to say
you pretend you know your work.
Yeah,
it's like I know more than you.
I'm pretty sure that people told the developer, like, no, you Japanese people are just wrong.
Yeah, no, that happened. Yeah, that happened.
It did happen.
Okay, a little explanations in order here. In the 2016 English translation of the game The House in Fata Morgana, the character Morgana refers to another character, Jacopo, as Tsundere, a word from anime culture that describes a character who is initially cold or even hostile, but gradually shows a friendlier side. Older anime fans think Madoka from Kimagure Orange Road. More recent fans think Senjo Gahara from the Monogatari series. The translators, with approval from the game's developer, translated this as fragile male ego. Recently, a YouTuber jumped on this translation as proof that Western social justice warriors were injecting feminism into the game, even though the translation was heartily endorsed by the creator.
But that was like, for me, maybe the Tsundere War was my favorite thing this year. Like, I had so much fun with it. It was so ridiculous.
I mean, it was shocking because, well, and people kept approaching it, and I guess people that don't speak Japanese approached it as if tsundere is a word used in common language. As if every day that's just something that comes up, when I've never heard anyone in real life actually say the word tsundere in a conversation, just like in a daily conversation. And I think that was the most interesting part of it, was that the context of like, this is not a word that people just use every day. Like, so, you know, in this case, it got translated in a way that is much more accessible. Wow. Was the Tsundere War of 2020 last month, or was it this month?
It was this month.
Oh my God. Oh my God. The passage
What is
of time?
What is time? Like, the developer doesn't know what they're talking about. And it's like, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
I made this.
It's just jarring. Yeah, I mean, they fully stood behind the translator. Like, they were perfectly fine with it.
Yeah, that was great to see.
Some weeps were like, no, you should have left tsundere as tsundere. And it's like, that's not how localization works.
No.
If that was a thing, I mean, my job would be way easier.
Right. Also, it assumes that, like, everyone knows what tsundere means.
Exactly.
And, like,
yeah,
Novectacle is trying to sell to a wider audience. And yeah, I mean, that's part of translation and localization is readability. And if you just left a ton of Japanese words that are known to like a really small community, no one would read these visual novels.
Yeah, the whole point of translation and localization is to translate and localize. Yeah. I mean, hot take.
Mind blown, but yes.
Yeah.
I still can't believe that was just this month. That went down on May 5th.
Yeah.
12 days ago.
And like Jean Paul says, that's actually it's weird because it's like a 4-year-old game. It's like a 4-year-old translation, but apparently some YouTuber got a hold of it, rallied the troops, and decided to go to war over it 4 years later. But at least never, I suppose.
I mean, I tell you, the power that people have when they have a camera and a strong opinion about Japanese culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they're white, like that's
I mean, it's just the trifecta.
I mean,
No. It's I totally agreed. Totally agreed. I think
Yeah.
way too highly of my own opinion. I'm totally so,
but if it helps, we agree mostly with you. So
yeah.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
And you shot at me when you don't, so that's good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely. Like, I think there's according to Keikaku, that's one of my favorite jokes. I think there's this whole subset of weeb culture that would be totally fine if, like, the official translations they receive are this like weird mix of Japanglish that only this certain in crowd understood. And like you said, Mercedes, people who in Japan, companies in Japan, if they're going to localize a product, localization is fucking expensive, people.
Yes.
It is expensive, and you don't want to lose money on it. You want to make the money back, and hopefully, at least net a little bit of profit out of the whole thing as well. So nobody's going to make a product that's not understandable. They're going to make the product that is understandable by the majority of people,
right?
By the widest possible audience.
Yeah.
And I'll say, as I've worked towards becoming a translator, I get shocked a lot because a lot of the things that people love that are translated works, they seem to not have a problem with, like, but then they have, one thing comes up and they find it in like a 4-year-old game and it's suddenly the bane of everything. But if we had these very, like, almost machine translated, very straightforward translations, they'd be horrible. I mean, could you imagine playing like Pokemon with a machine translation? It would be a nightmare. These things that people enjoy, they have to have. I mean, and there's also, like, from the Tsundere thing, there was this weird feeling of like translators are the enemy, but translators are people who care about the work they're doing. Why would they do it if they didn't?
Yeah.
Why would you pour all of this time into something that's incredibly expensive to do if you didn't care? I mean, I think the translation that a certain subset of fans think they want is not what they want at all. Like, you don't want a very machine translated version. You don't want that. It's bad. It's not good.
Yeah.
You don't want one world.
Yeah, you want something that has heart.
Yeah.
And I mean, translating is hard. That's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not going and putting it on Google and then like rewriting it or like proofreading whatever Google gave you. It's hard.
Yeah.
It takes brain juice.
Well,
it takes time. It's like sometimes I will get stuck in a word and I will be thinking about it in the shower, thinking about it before going to sleep. And maybe a week later, I come up with the translation.
Right.
And by then I have already submitted it and it's like too late. And it's like, oh, God damn it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Yeah. And that's the thing I struggle with, because the fact is that there isn't like this like mysterious or mystical one-to-one correspondence between what gets said in Japan and what gets said in Japanese and what you could translate into English. There's a number of different ways, and if you set 10 different translators to translate the same thing, you'd get 10 different translations.
Or 20.
Or 20. Yeah, because even after I translate things, sometimes I'll translate it and then I'll be like, oh no, that wasn't the best way to say that. Like you said, you can spin on a phrase or a word. Like that word tsundere, like they debated that word for days.
Yeah.
According to one of the original translators, it wasn't a simple thing. They really fretted on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard and it's very skilled work. And I mean, like, for any fan who doesn't like a translation, I eagerly invite you to begin your journeys on learning Japanese today. There's lots of resources, and then you can criticize. And once you understand what you're criticizing, or you can do the alternative, which is If you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say it at all, especially not on Twitter or in a YouTube video.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to just hit some comments real quick and wrap this up, and I want to go into another part of our discussion.
Oh, cat.
Yeah.
Oh my
cat.
gosh,
Kitty. Oh, no.
That's
Oh,
a
no.
very good cat.
We've
So
lost the
Yeah.
live stream to the cat. It's over.
Sorry.
I'm not getting any more back now.
He's screaming, so he wants to be held. So,
Yeah. So I tried translating some Yonkoma for 4 panels, and it can be surprisingly hard. Yeah. You know what? I actually think, actually, I love that comment. That's a problem I have with translating tweets sometimes. The briefer something is, the harder it is to translate it. The less context you have, the harder it is to actually, figure out what it is you should say, or even sometimes like what the author is saying, because there's just so much context implied that you might not know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like even linguistically, it makes sense because English is a low context language, and Japanese is a high context language.
Yeah.
yeah.
So in Japanese, if you say chotto, it can mean like, hey, wait. It can mean a little bit. It can mean no.
Yeah.
So if you have just one
50%
bubble
of the
with
time it
chotto,
means no.
yeah, but if you have a bubble,
それはちょっと.
yeah, and it's like, 欲しい、ちょっと. It's like, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So the
totally.
shorter it is, the more difficult it is. Like that as a rule.
Yep. I feel like
Japanese is hard.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I feel like it's an issue with the larger weeb community being influenced by anti-SJW sentiments. Yeah, and then putting on blinders and kind of only seeing what they want to see. I've had people explicitly say like they're not even reading my tweets because they don't trust them. I've heard from other people say that apparently everyone I retweet is actually a shadow puppet account I created.
Oh my god.
Like any excuse not to process information that kind of goes.
I mean, you and I apparently we're the same person.
That's so ridiculous.
I've seen that before, that you all are just actually the same person, which is just.
I wish my Japanese were that good. Do these people understand like what expert native level of Japanese I would need to be able to write this shit? I mean, I wish.
Someone in the comments actually brought something up really great about the whole like weeb community. Andrew actually said, I feel like it's an issue with the larger weeb community being influenced by anti-SJW sentiments. And that is true because a lot of the Gamergate community and the weeb community like intersect so deeply. And I say this is somebody who works as a games journalist and a reviewer. It's like they're basically like one and the same in the West. Like if you are part of Gamergate, you are also probably like of this opinion that this translator is injecting feminism into my anime or my video games, and how so I'm not going to curse. How dare you do that? Because that's it's like this this whole big movement that's kind of like within like its own like Venn diagram.
There's this huge underpinning of like Japan being this last bastion of only Japanese people, of kind of purity, and like that sentiment combined with a lot of the white nationalism that's kind of gotten into anime communities, especially in America, especially in North America. I also think that like that's kind of always a little bit at work along with the Gamergate part when it comes to how that subset of fans criticizes things.
Yeah, and it's just what Andrew said. People view Japan as like this perfect ethno state when it's absolutely not. You've been like it's something that I've actively been seeing for like ever. There was this argument made by some very, very large people within the gaming community and the animation community, I think in like 2006, where they were arguing, basically for Islamophobia in America, based on the idea that Japan is a perfect ethno state and they're doing so great. So other countries, and this is, I think, again, like a lot of conservatives flee to Japan because of just like this idea of it being a perfect ethno-state, or again, they idealize the myth of like the samurai and like honor and everything and tradition and like a subservient wife and things like that. So like, therefore these stereotypes exist, therefore it is the perfect country for me to come in there and basically live my conservative lifestyle.
It's not like this perfect paradise of submissive women and strong men and these, you know, centuries old ideals. Like, Japan has never been a perfect place, because nowhere is a perfect place, and that's good, right? Like, it's good that it's not just stayed homogenous and closed off in 2020. It's good that, you know, there's other people. And I mean, that's not even like other people from the West. There's just other cultures in Japan that were here in Japan.
Right. Yeah. And that's a thing that I was going to say that pisses me off a lot, is that people talk about this and it completely ignores like the reality of, you know, the displacement of like the Ainu in Japan. It ignores like what happened to the Ryukyu state in Okinawa. You know, there were like native communities in the Japanese islands, you know, before the Yamato people completely took over, and they are still there today, fighting for their rights, fighting for recognition. And you know, that doesn't even start to get into not only the foreigners who live in Japan, but you know, all the people of mixed nationality, of Japanese and other nationalities living in Japan as well, who deal with this problem of, you know, being Japanese, being raised Japanese, being culturally Japanese, but not being treated Japanese.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 So I think one thing I wanted to dive into next, and thanks for everybody for the really active discussion on the side. Oh, actually, one thing I did want to comment on with Octoling, even with its lousy government, you'll still find hate speech is not acceptable for us posters in Ikebukuro Station. This is one thing that I really come to understand the past couple of years while doing Unseen Japan, and particularly reading the stuff on Twitter that Melon, writer of Scratch, does about LGBT movements. A lot happens at the local level, a lot faster than happens at the national level. Like in terms of hate speech, I think it's Kawasaki, if I remember correctly, that actually passed a hate speech ordinance and is actually taking people to court over it. There's now 50 local jurisdictions that support marriage partnerships for LGBT couples. You know, there's a lot of activism done at kind of, you know, the ward level, done at the city level, and done even at the prefecture level. That, again, unless you're tracking Japanese politics like really closely, you don't see it. It doesn't really make it into like kind of mainstream news about Japan.
Yeah, it is very easy to cultivate the Japan that you want to see, and very easy to not see anything else. And I think like personally, I think like I've benefited so much from seeing that really powerful like local activity, and seeing people mobilize and like, you know, I mean, really come together and fill in the gaps where the national government doesn't.
Like something that I would like to point out is that for all this manga and anime that there is about, you know, shonen ai, shoujo ai, like gay marriage is still not a thing.
So
and
transitioning is almost like impossible. So
So there is a very big discrepancy there. And I mean, also the fact that you pointed out, Kazuma, is that a lot revolves around like the fetish.
Yeah, fetishization.
It's not. It's weird.
Yeah.